Hi, Susan Gardner here from Municipal World. We're at the 2019 Transforming Local Government Conference in Reno, Nevada. Joining me in our media center today is Vinh Giang. Welcome, Vinh.
Hi.
Vinh is an entrepreneur, keynote speaker, and magician. Interesting combination. Tell us a little bit about what it is you do.
I spend a lot of time speaking at conferences, so I do about 60 to 70 events a year, and then I spend the majority of my time outside of that. I teach people public speaking and communication skills. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, and I teach magic on the internet. So
Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So you have, I think I've heard you speak about the definition of magic. What is magic?
I think of magic when you look at it from a very kind of theoretical point of view. It's really just a problem people can't solve. So when I perform a trick for you, unfortunately for the viewers out there too, magic's not real in a sense that magicians perform sleight of hand. So what you see is literally a problem. You just don't have the right point of view to be able to solve the problem we present to you. So then you perceive it as being magic. So it's a pleasant problem.
It's a pleasant problem.
Yeah.
So your presentation, magic, of course, entertaining, yes, but you really kind of use it as a tool to teach people something else.
Yeah, well, first of all, my wife's a pharmacist, and she came up with a great line. She goes, "You found a way to make the medicine taste good." So a lot of the times I think the messages that I share, they're important because people need to hear them. It's not new messages, it's messages that have been always spoken and messages that people always try to put forward, but it's put forward in a different way so that it's more palatable. And it's, again, it's making the medicine taste good, I think, is important.
It's the tool for the greater purpose of education.
Yeah, it's the metaphor.
Yeah. So in the context of innovation, because obviously we're at the Alliance for Innovation event, Transforming Local Government, how does this work into the context of innovation?
Well, look, I think, first of all, to give some context, magicians the industry of magic was deeply disrupted in the late 90s. So there's a magician called Val Valentino, and do you know the masked magician? Have you seen that in Canada? So the masked magician is a magician who wears this black mask and he reveals all of magic. Have you seen this?
Yes, I have seen.
Oh, you have seen this?
Yes.
So he's a magician that was paid an enormous amount of money, and he was paid to do this, to then do 4 or 5 seasons of revealing every single magic trick out there. So that was disruption for magicians. Magicians were now forced to innovate because sawing the woman in half, floating, zigzag girl, all these.
The speaker's gone.
Well, the speaker's gone because it was shown on public TV. Yeah. So magicians were put in a position now where in the late 90s we were forced to innovate. So if people think back, they'll remember a period where magic kind of died. Magic kind of disappeared. No one really talked about magic anymore, and that was during the early 2000s to about the late 2010-ish, and then magic came back. So during that 10 years, magicians were put into a position where they were forced to create new magic, which was innovation. We had to innovate. And the way magicians did this, if we just spent time with other magicians, we would have never created new magic. Magicians now had to work with psychologists. Some magicians work with hypnotists. Some magicians start to work with engineers, electrical engineers, to create new pieces of magic that was never been created before. Some magicians played a lot with technology. One particular magician, Marco Tempest, created incredible illusions with the help of technology, artificial intelligence, all these kind of cool tech, iPads even. So what that showed magicians and taught magicians is that the only way to innovate is to work with people you've never worked with before. And I think that totally applies to local government, in that if you want to create new solutions, you're going to have to work with organizations, companies, industries you've never worked with before, and that's going to feel massively uncomfortable. But unless you're willing to do that, you're using the same minds to try to solve the problems these minds came up with. That's not going to work.
You can't use the old playbook for new challenges.
No, but the problem with it is that it's hard. The problem with it, it's uncomfortable. It's difficult, and also the problem with it is, you think, well, there's like magicians. There's no point us working with an engineer. They know nothing about magic. So you have these preconceptions about, well, why it's not important to work with these people. But in fact, the solution lies with the people you've never worked with before.
So it's your your professional network remains important, but looking outside that to,
of course,
to academia, private sector,
yeah,
all of that becomes really important.
I think so. To keep an open mind,
yes,
to know that, and then that's the core of the message I'll be speaking about today is to keep an open mind.
I like kind of the metaphor you use about perspective, mm-hmm. and that, you know, you and I sitting here, our perspective is one thing, but the person on the other side of the recording equipment in this instance has a different perspective, sees things going on around us that we don't see, and that's why that's important to get that pull that other perspective in.
Definitely,
so,
and it definitely applies with magic, because, you know, if we were doing something here, you wouldn't see how I do the trick, but the person or the camera will be able to see the trick.
Yes.
And it's just such a good representation of, in psychology, it's called change blindness. Change blindness is when you get so focused on one thing that you don't see everything else around you. And often, that means you can't solve the problems you face. But what's worse is there's so many opportunities around us right now. So many opportunities around all of us right now that we're just blind to see, because we're stuck in a silo mentality.
Great observation. So if you're stuck in one of these silos, if your organization is stuck inside kind of this change blindness silo, what are some initial baby steps? Because as you said, it's going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to be risky, particularly for public sector organizations. How do you take those first baby steps? What does that look like? You know,
first of all, you have to change yourself. You know, you have to kind of change your own perception of why it's so important to change perspective. So a couple of key actions for you to do first. I know this sounds a bit bizarre, but just for yourself, right? If you want to change the way you look at things, just so you can experience the benefits of this before you start preaching it to others and try to apply it at work, take a new route home. Take a different route home. Because normally you get stuck in the silo mentality. One of the effects is, for example, you drive home the same street all the time to the point where when you're driving home, you get stuck in a trance. And you don't even realize you're driving. Because you do the same route all the time, you don't even realize. So when you get in the car, you actually switch off.
Yes, I've been there. I was like, how did I actually?
Yeah, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm driving. So it freaks you out, right?
Yes.
So take a different route home and realize how much more engaged you are with the road.
Changes your level of awareness, right?
Absolutely. You start to notice things. You see things you haven't seen before. You're now actually not on cruise control, but you're engaged. So that's a simple thing. You could go and try new restaurants you haven't tried. And again, that opens your own mind up to the benefit of having a different perspective, right? It just opens your mind up. And then when trying to bring this to a professional level at work, you genuinely just have to go out of your comfort zone, whether you use LinkedIn, whether you go to networking functions. Engage with people that you've never engaged with before. Look for an industry expert you've never engaged with before, and sit down with them and share with them the problems that you're experiencing. Just take the time to share with them the problems you're experiencing. Be vulnerable for a second. And you'll be surprised at what they see. One of the first $1 million ideas we came up with for our online business was given to me through a friend of mine who's a plumber.
Really?
Yep, he was a plumber. And we bought him a Rolex after that, but he had a perspective that we couldn't believe we missed. And it was so simple. So don't discount.
I have to know.
Yeah, I'll get you. I'll show
you. You have to.
So we're sitting down watching this magic show, and he goes, "Dude, do you know how many people are Googling how to do this trick?" And we're like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Do you know how many people after watching this magic show will Google how to put a coin in a soda can?" So he goes, "So what you should do is, man, you should look when this show airs in different cities, and then buy Google AdWords based on the magic show that is airing, based on the trick that is playing, to then entice people. Because how many people are Googling how to put a coin in a soda can?" So then we through his advice, looked up every single show that was playing around the world, watched all the magic shows, watched what tricks were playing, and then did Google targeting marketing for those specific keywords, for that specific city, for that specific time period.
Wow.
So we went from a cost acquisition of getting a customer for about $25 to less than 50 cents.
Wow. Amazing.
It was unreal. But again, can you see how that golden nugget of wisdom
Absolutely.
came from a seed that someone from an unexpected industry,
Yes.
and it's via conversation.
Yes.
This is why
Human connection.
Human connection, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I teach communication. Because let's say you have all these brilliant ideas, or someone else has those brilliant ideas. If you can't communicate, there's no ideas. There's no transfer of ideas.
Yes.
And if you've
There's
got
no
that,
innovation.
there's no innovation. Yes,
Yeah.
because innovation requires that human connection.
Yes.
And one thing I'll say here as well, it's something I really believe in, is that, you know, when you're not able to communicate, it's like you have this bridge that is very tiny and thin, and then the only way to deliver value across this bridge between you and I is by someone carrying the value on their back and then walking across this thin bridge. But when you're able to communicate effectively, then you can build a massive bridge. You can drive trucks of value across. And all of a sudden, when communication is enhanced, then collaboration is improved. So again, I think it's very important when it comes to innovation.
Wonderful. And I think these are great insights for local governments and you know, really any industry. But
yeah, look, they're the first steps. I
Yes.
think they're the first steps to slowly opening our minds to the possibility moving forward.
Right. And once that starts to happen, then it gets some momentum, and that's
Yeah.
when we have change.
And let's use the metaphor, build bridges. Start building more bridges to industries you've never worked with before. And just build the foundation of the bridge, and then the value will slowly be transferred.
Fantastic. It was a great connection of magic to local government and innovation. Thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
coming in.
Thanks for
It's
having
great.
me.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
I'm Susan Gardner from Municipal World. We share your stories.